I created the Constitution Project in 1997 when there was a slew of constitutional amendments that were being processed through Congress, and a number of them seemed like they were going to pass. And so we looked into what the founders intended for the constitutional amendment process and discovered that they did not want the Constitution to be used as a political tool. They wanted lawmakers to try to use policy changes as opposed to constitutional amendments first. So our committee, which was made up of an ideological diversity of experts, created a handbook, a series of recommendations for when and how the Constitution should be amended in order to avoid the problem of politicians using the Constitution as a political tool and to promote the kind of restraint that the founders intended. Three major objectives that the Constitution Project is addressing are the indigent defense system, which is now in crisis. It's a Sixth Amendment right, but because of inadequate funding on the state level and the federal level, the system is in crisis. The second is to try to make the capital punishment system fairer, because there are too many wrongful convictions and perhaps too many wrongful executions. And the third is to make the adversarial system, which is what the criminal justice system is supposed to be, as fair as possible by giving judges more discretion, by eliminating mandatory minimums, and by addressing cases of prosecutorial misconduct. The primary leverage point that makes the Constitution Project successful is our ability to recruit unlikely allies. And the reason that that's important is because too many times when we advocate for constitutional rights, whether it's for criminal defendants or people suspected of terrorism, people will accuse the advocates like us of being soft on crime or soft on terrorism. And what we do is we bring in people who nobody can consider soft on crime or soft on terrorism: national security experts, law enforcement professionals, former prosecutors, former judges, who will explain that these are constitutional rights that are important to all Americans, and that supporting them doesn't mean that you're soft on crime or soft on terrorism. What makes the Constitution Project effective is our ability to be substantive, honest brokers. And that means bringing together people who might ordinarily not talk to each other and have them sit down in good faith and with open minds and come to consensus conclusions and recommendations about what the Constitution demands, and then convey those recommendations to policymakers, to the media, to the public, to make them understand what it is that the Constitution requires. And we are often relied upon by our allies in the field to be the front organization, because we are putting together and conveying the voices of an ideological diversity of people, all of whom believe that the Constitution needs to be safeguarded. No matter whether they come from different perspectives or not, they all come to the same conclusion. The metrics of success for the Constitution Project are principally the number of allies, of partners who rely on us to validate their views on the problems with the criminal justice system by bringing forward these unlikely allies who can't be considered soft on crime or soft on terrorism. And so when we're asked to do op-eds or to conduct briefings or to talk to the press, we consider that to be a big success, because it's something that our partners often cannot do. Then we can constitute a majority, and we can convince policymakers to vote the way we'd like them to. we want people to know that we don't just write reports and recommendations, that we're very much an activist organization, and that we are out there throughout the country and in Congress advocating for these reports, pushing for our recommendations, and validating the views of our partners who are also pushing for these recommendations and for these reforms to the criminal justice system. And we do so through the Unlikely Allies and the diversity of our Blue Ribbon committees and our very prestigious board. Some of the Constitution Project's major accomplishments in recent months have included our torture report, which is the first and only report of its kind to describe how various administrations, Democratic and Republican, have treated people who've been held as terrorism suspects, and how some of those people have been tortured with the knowledge of and the encouragement of high-level administration officials. And we've become a national leader in trying to fix the indigent defense crisis. We've set up a meeting with the Attorney General and other high-level officials at the Justice Department for national leaders around the country. And finally, we are a leader on the death penalty, especially on the federal level, but also on the state level, where we're about to issue a new report that will describe the reforms that are desperately needed in states around the country to make sure that, as much as possible, we are not convicting and executing the wrong people. I think the major historical challenge that we have faced and our partners in the field have faced is that when people advocate for constitutional rights, they're considered soft on crime or soft on terrorism, and their views are discounted. And what we've done by bringing together national security experts and former prosecutors, judges, other law enforcement officials is to disprove that. The essence of our work is to show that we can be safe and we can also protect our civil liberties at the same time. And that's what we've been very successful in doing. The Constitution Project is a very small organization. We only have 10 staff members. Only 5 of those are lawyers. And so with additional resources, we'd be able to expand our expert staff and take on more issues. We'd be able to have a more targeted and strategic communications plan, and we'd have more financial stability so that we're not always worried about where the next paycheck is going to come from, or the next foundation grant, or the next individual contribution. That takes up a lot of our time, and we would like to have the long-term stability that we need in order to do a great job with the work that we do. There are 2 issues that I'm very concerned about, and one is that the cutbacks in constitutional rights that we're seeing in terrorism cases are seeping into ordinary criminal cases, where people are saying, you don't have to read them their Miranda rights, you can keep them in custody in order to get information out of them without getting them lawyers. And the second issue is that at the same time that we're seeing many states repealing the death penalty, we're seeing other states repealing the protections that are very important to make sure that we don't convict and even execute the wrong people. And those are 2 areas where I'd like to see the Constitution Project be much more involved with appropriate resources.